Welcome back to Oneself. As you can see, a little different today. We are IRL, folks. We are in the flesh. With me today, with me always, is Adam Bartman, and with me in person is Adam Bartman. So this is a very special edition of Oneself, where Adam and I are geographically in the same location. Adam, thanks so much for joining me today, bro.
Thanks for having me, Steven.
Yeah, he's come far and wide, y'all, to be here in person. So we really appreciate that. Folks, we've almost been doing this for a year now, and Adam and I kind of went through and uh, did an assessment on what we stand for. We're 40 plus episodes, and the things that we're talking about, and the themes that we're talking about, and the things that keep coming up for us. And hopefully, if you're listening to us, that's probably something that resonated with you. So the first one that we had, y'all, was awareness comes before change, right? And you can apply that to society, you can apply that to yourselves. But in order to change any sort of negative behavior within yourself, there has to be some sort of awareness. And, we're speaking not because we're, again, because we know better. We're speaking from experience of, like, we've probably gone through these lessons the hard way, and we want you to maybe learn from our mistakes, and so hopefully you can bypass the hard way and just learn from where we stumbled. So yeah, Adam, we have 7 points, y'all. So I think maybe I just want to rattle maybe all of them off, and then we're gonna go down. We're gonna just touch upon each of them and why they're important. So number one was awareness coming before change. Number two is fear not love, y'all. Number three is healing requires responsibility, right? Number four, masculinity needs introspection. That one's a big one. And then number five is the outer world reflects the inner world. Number six, community matters. Number seven, conscious living. A lot of these might sound like common sense, but what we see in the world doesn't often reflect what we're taught. We're taught these things when we were children. Adam and I mentioned in the last episode, you see Sesame Street or Mr. Rogers, or in today's world, Miss Rachel. They're, be kind to your neighbor, be nice, be gentle, be forgiving, all these things that were taught as kids that completely just get thrown out the window as soon as you become an adult. So a lot of these things might sound like common sense, but we want to just bring awareness to them and raise the point that yes, they're common sense, but we're hypocrites when it comes to implementing them into the real world. So yeah, Adam, those are our 7 pillars, I think, of oneself that's been kind of exciting to keep defining who we are and what we stand for. So number one, my friend, let's just touch upon it again. Awareness preceding change.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
Yeah. I mean, it's like not waiting for someone to come and save us, I think is a good way of understanding that. It's not going like the change isn't gonna happen without us putting our conscious effort into it. So and that starts with our awareness. So yeah, it's like not waiting for the savior to come, but rather being our own saviors. So I think that's like just a really simple way of looking at it. But yeah, how do you think about it?
Yeah. So, in my own journey, when you're participating in perhaps in negative behavior
Mm,
that other people that are impacted by, whether that's just me not communicating, or, I mentioned in past episodes being conflict avoidant,
yeah,
that actually creates more problems and anxiety in the people around me that care about me because I'm not communicating effectively.
yeah,
Right. And so when those behaviors were brought to my awareness, I wasn't even aware I was doing them for a large
yeah,
part of the time. And again, when I'm by myself, if I'm in the woods, or, if I'm playing music, or, if I'm by myself alone, I'm not interacting with people enough that care about me enough for them to be like, call me out of my shit,
yeah,
And so when you're around people that care about you and love you, and, see the good in you, but also see where you can keep heading towards or keep growing in. I think the cool thing about that was that, the people that I really care about have brought awareness for the things that they want to see in me and the change that they want to see in me. So ideally people can come to these own, do a really true honest self evaluation, right? I'm trying to get better at that, where it's like I'm trying to audit my own behavior
Yeah.
before others can call attention to it. And there can be a flip side to that too. It can be manipulative as well. If people are trying to like call you out on bad behaviors and isolate you from other people. Like I'm not saying that, those people calling you out on some stuff can always be for a good thing.
Yeah.
But if you're surrounded by healthy people that care about you, that love you, they understand that no one's perfect, right? Perfection doesn't exist. And but to just be aware of the things that you're doing allows you to, number one, take accountability, and then two, move forward, right? Move forward with the behavioral changes that ideally lead you on a more positive growth path for your life.
Yeah.
And yeah, so this one's been huge for me, y'all. And I hope, you might resonate with that, where it's just being aware, right? Being
Yeah.
aware of our behaviors and being aware of where we stumble in order to kind of correct it. One thing that I've found with the public school system, I don't know if you felt this growing up, Adam, where it's just like we were conditioned to be terrified of failure, like
Yeah.
be so afraid of failure. When failure is the best teacher, like when I stumble, that lesson sticks with me
Yeah.
the most, right? And so it's like when the failure brings awareness, the imperfection brings awareness. And if you don't do anything with that knowledge, yes, that's not necessarily a good thing. If you just ignore that knowledge or you continue down the path of wherever you're headed, that's not great. But if you fail, if you stumble and you can course correct, that is such a great way to navigate forward through time, I think. And yeah, man, I think those are just my opening thoughts on awareness.
Yeah, and like you said, being around trusted people, then they can really be that mirror for you.
Yeah,
They can reflect it back and help you gain that awareness because they are being that mirror. And just like that saying goes, you can't if you're wanting reflection in the mirror to smile, you have to smile first.
yeah,
And so if you're wanting that to be reflected in your life, then that requires that awareness in order to create the smile that creates that reflection that you wish to see.
yeah,
So yeah, cool.
yeah, brother.
Right on. On to point two.
On to point two, folks. Fear versus love, right? And I've mentioned in past episodes where I was brought up in the Catholic Church, right? And I had the very conflicting message of God loves you, like Jesus loves you, but also this be terrified of going to hell, be terrified of committing sin, be terrified, right? Fear,
Mm.
be fear. And we've mentioned this in the past. Like I don't think that hate is the opposite of love. I think it's fear, and I think hate is derived from fear. You end up fearing because you're afraid of the unknown or someone who's unknown from a different culture or different background. You're afraid of that, right? What if they're trying to hurt me? And so you end up hating or resenting or fearing what you don't know. And that doesn't lead to positive outcomes for humanity, right? And so a lot of these institutions, these systems of human history have been rooted in fear, right? It's not just religion. It's, there's cultures, there's nation states, right? Whether it's in dictatorships or that sort of thing, they want their populations in fear. And Adam and I have pointed to moments in history in the past where the fear has fallen, where like apartheid South Africa or East Berlin in Germany, when all of a sudden everyone in that society said the fear of the institution is not worth the suffering that we're already placing. So they have nothing to lose. So all of a sudden the fear drops, right? Everyone just kind of collectively has had enough. And all of a sudden, those societies change overnight. And when we come to humanity being mostly rooted in fear, our goal, and we hope the goal of others, is to be more rooted in love. And where I would say that's rooted to, Adam, is it starts within, right? Don't try to change the whole world. Like if you just grow within yourself some self-love, you are changing the world. Because if everyone's trying to do that, the world will become a better place if everyone's more rooted in love. So, Adam, any thoughts on point two, my friend? Fear versus love.
Yeah, I mean, it's cool to look and see how it all connects because you can tell someone fear versus love, and it's like, yeah, we've all heard that a million times before. But if you just observe, it's observably true that we have not actually learned that lesson, even though we intellectually understand it. It's not being reflected in our experience. We clearly have not embodied that as wisdom. So it's like point one goes with point two.
Yeah.
awareness. And
Yeah, they're all
yeah,
connected. They're all
e-
connected.
yeah, every time we, just understanding that everything boils down to those two emotions, then you can look at all of the behaviors that are masquerading as one thing but are really another. Like, for example, talk about men and toxic masculinity and like the whole tough guy thing, right? If you just follow that thread back, where does like trying to act tough lead to? It leads to fear. The person is in fear. Whoever's displaying that behavior is in fear. So when we unpack that, we can see more clearly, see how to move through our environment and our world more skillfully, more gracefully, and recognize that we don't have to take things personally. We don't have to take on that fear. Essentially, we don't have to make it our own. We can, like Martin Luther King said, we can combat fear with love instead. So it makes an abundance of sense once we look at it. It all becomes so simple. Just follow it, and that's a great one. Just follow the thread back, whatever the expression, whatever the emotion is, follow it back and see if it traces to love or fear, and then you got your answer on how to move through that energy.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Number three, y'all. Healing requires responsibility.
Mm.
Man in the Mirror, that Michael Jackson song. It's like,
Yeah,
you
it's a
get,
good one.
where does this start? Where does this healing journey start? Where does personal growth start? Where does you living to your highest potential start? It starts with accountability and taking responsibility for our own actions, our own history. My upbringing was rooted largely in shame. You know what I mean? And so it was kind of a mind fuck for me, whereas like the shame kept me from taking like responsibility because I didn't want to look at it because I was shamed. So it was just like this downward spiral circle.
Perfect trap.
Perfect trap, right? And so it's yeah, it's pretty smart if you want to keep people down. It's like keep them shamed, right?
Yeah.
And but it doesn't have to be full of shame, right? Again, don't look at yourself with this responsibility aspect. Just like when people say discipline is love, right? When you take yourself to the gym every day, or when you stretch every day, or you eat healthy every day, that's love. You are showing love to yourself. It's the highest form of, I really believe that discipline is love, because um, because you're holding yourself accountable every day. You're taking your body and your mind into your own responsibility. And the same thing comes into play with healing, right? It's like these daily things that you have to do, whether it's go touch grass, whether it's meditate, whether it's journal. Like that's a regimen, and you add in a job, you add in family, you add in kids, you add in paying the bills. Like it takes a concerted effort to truly set aside that time every single day, or most days, and to pursue the healing, right? The healing of yourself, the healing of your nervous system, the healing of your traumas, whatever you've been through in your life, um, in order to build a better world, in order to build a better person. So, yeah, man, those are my thoughts on that, right? And just it starts with us, right? Don't point the finger. What do people say when you point a finger, there's three pointing right back at you, right? And it's true. Before you point the finger at and everyone loves to do this with the comments, or the algorithms, in the world, right? Everyone likes to be like, they suck, you're doing this wrong, this that, you know what I mean? But it's the Teddy Roosevelt quote thing, where it's like, the man in the arena, right? Don't If you're doing the work and you are if you're trying, right, don't worry about the people in the stands, because they're not trying, they're just spectating. And yeah, and so, it's like, if you're out there and you're trying, even if it's messy, even if you stumble, for me myself, right? It's like I'm two steps forward, one step back, but it's still forward progress. It's like you think you got a handle on yourself, and then you peel back another layer, and you're like, oh fuck, I got to deal with this too.
Yeah.
So it's a continual lifelong process, but it's the growth that we take into whatever comes after this life, hopefully, right? We can't take the material possessions with us, but we can take this with our soul's journey into whatever comes next. So yeah, Adam, what are your thoughts on point number three? Healing requires responsibility.
Man, that's a deep one, and it's also, obviously everything's connected, and as I said, these points are all connected. But yeah, that's a great example. Is the are the people sitting back in comments throwing shade, or criticizing who's down in the arena, right? Because what you have to understand is if you're judging something, if someone is finding fault in someone else, that is truly a fault that they're just seeing it within themselves. It's always a direct reflection. So like again, you bring this awareness into your everyday life and it just makes things so much more interesting and so much more clear and simple at the same time when you can it's a little paradoxical, but when you can see someone throwing an insult, you go, okay, that's how they feel about themselves. They have just shown their subconscious. They have displayed it for those who have eyes to see, because it's always that once you've healed it within yourself, once you brought it into wholeness, into resolution, however you want to say it, that you won't even notice that. You won't even notice someone else doing something wrong, because it's not that that behavior isn't still going on and you're all of a sudden you have blinders on. It's just that you don't see it as wrong anymore, because you understand that there's nothing wrong. It's all a part of an infinite process of evolution that is moving from one place to another. So again, if I have if I have like fully cooked those seeds within myself, then I don't see that that old behavior, that old toxic behavior that I used to have in someone else. I don't see that as something wrong, because I recognize myself in that person. Again, expanding the definition of self, I see them as a reflection of where I used to be. And I know, like, well, I used to be there, and that was part of my process, being stuck in that behavior until I figured it out. And no one could tell me. I had to figure it out myself. So it's like you see that, you see whatever you're previously thinking to judge or criticize as beautiful. It's like, it's just like a child learning to walk. If they fall down, you don't say like they're shitty at walking. You're like, no, you're just like the kid. You're just learning how to walk. That's part of the process. To judge it, to put a moral judgment on someone's process, just becomes seen for what it is, which is completely absurd and nonsensical, and an expression of your own distortion and misunderstanding. Which again, so it's like, you know, it circles back to the four agreements. The one agreement: don't take anything personally. So yeah, man. Responsibility. That's like being responsible for ourselves. And if you're putting shit on someone else, like, you're not being responsible for yourself. It just logically follows that you're not, because there's a misunderstanding there. If you're seeing something quote unquote wrong in somebody else, it's a reflection of the it's a call for yourself to go back in and work on yourself. Yeah, like Jesus said, you're calling out the mote, like the little speck in your brother's eye when you have a beam in yours. Yeah. It's the, cast and accuse without sin, cast the first stone, like nobody can. That's the whole point. Yeah, yeah,
Point four, y'all. Masculinity needs integration, right?
yeah. Sorry about my handwriting.
No worries. He's writing in cursive, y'all. It's a lost art. So that's we appreciate going back to seventh grade where I had to write my name in cursive. But yeah, when we talk about masculinity and when we talk about yeah, you're an artist, bro. When we talk about masculinity, y'all, it's like we were all the things I was taught when it came to my masculinity growing up. It was an inverse of what Adam and I have found to be true, which is when to be tough, or to be whatever, don't be a pussy, don't be a snitch or a rat or whatever, that all this shit that I was told when I was a kid, which I understand life is hard, and I understand like I understand the merit of what the men around me were trying to do, or even the women as well, right? It's not like little boys don't cry, or it's just, it's a cultural thing that we're all choosing, right, to put these thoughts in young men's heads. And so when it comes to those sort of messages that we were taught as children, Adam and I found that not to be true at all, right? Where it's like, I think vulnerability is powerful. I think vulnerability is strength. I think having your emotions felt and processing them and moving through them creates healthier men. And, and it does create strength too, right? It's like, when there's that stillness and there's that that quietness within me, I think it does create strength. And again, like I recognize that life is tough. And like I said earlier, like discipline is love. Like it's like I do hard things, right? Do hard things. I know life is tough. I want people to be strong because there's a lot of things that need to be changed in this world for it to be a better place. And so, that's going to take strong people to do that, right? And so I love strength. I hope, everyone that cultivates that strength within themselves and realizes that the power and the love that they have within themselves. But there's been this fucking this mind fuck when it comes to all these things that we were taught, and they're just not true, right? They're just not true in terms of like what true masculinity should be, in our opinion, right? And yeah, man, those are my thoughts on number four. Adam, you got anything to add to that?
Yeah, the masculinity needs integration because it's like, um, as we saw, it can go either end of the polarity. Uh, seems popular now, either doubling down on the toxic masculinity side of it,
Yeah, the
going like
incels or
going like hyper,
yeah,
hyper whatever our society is considered
alpha, like all
yeah,
that bullshit.
all
Yeah,
that bullshit. Or it can go the other way where people are trying to do away with masculinity entirely. And we just don't think that really makes sense. That's not realistic. Uh, Denying ourselves and trying to take on yet another identity that is aside from that which is part of what we're born with, just separates us further. I believe anyway. And yeah, it's recognizing that inversion that exists in our society where like your example, men are trying to toughen up little boys by saying, don't cry, don't share your emotions, and it has the inverse of the intended effect, the opposite of the
creates
intended.
more broken men.
Yeah, the opposite of the intended effect that actually weakens us.
Yeah,
You think we're getting tougher, and it's actually weakening us, and it's like so observably true. And this is again why we need to have the awareness to perceive this change, which again, just look to your immediate surroundings. Be keen observers of life, recognize that the truth is all around us, that it's not working. It hasn't been working for generations, yet we still keep sticking to these scripts of like, shut up and like drink a beer and watch the football game with the guys instead of like having a real
yeah,
relationship with yourself and your friends and like being able to truly strengthen yourself. Because man, I look back to when I was more of that guy. Was never into football, but 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 when I was more of that guy, and man, I was a broken mess, and like and I had people around me that thought I was the opposite of that, but that's only because we are all sort of like Ram Dass said, just reassuring that our reassuring each other that our masks are on straight.
yeah,
That's what it mostly is. It's like people virtue signaling and kind of like a subset of that is like masculinity signaling, men
yeah,
men coming into a space together and talking about the game and talking about like speaking about women in horrible ways. It's like all these little signals they're doing to each other to like to remind or to yeah, to signal to each other that like, okay, we're all following the same thought forms, we're all in the same team, and like let's misery loves company, let's stick together in this. But it's like that doesn't work. It's just it keeps us chasing our tails down through the generations and completely missing the point. So yeah, man, masculinity needing integration, not to be so
balance, bringing
yeah.
masculinity into balance, not denying it, not going hyper masculine,
Yeah.
right? Just like bringing it back into balance. Any you Star Wars fans out there, balance with the Force, right? Which I am a big Star Wars fan.
Cool.
Yeah, nerd alert.
Yeah.
Number five, the outer world reflects the inner world. Again, another common sense one, but like one that needs to be repeated, where everyone has met the coworker, the acquaintance or whatever, where it's just like they have a bad attitude. Their perspective on the world is negative, and they wake up with a chip on their shoulder. And totally understand. Like, once again, like we said, life is hard here on Earth. There's a lot of suffering on this earth, but does a poor attitude or a poor disposition, does that help anybody? Absolutely not. And everyone has been a part of a team. Everyone has those experiences where there's that, yeah, that one person, right, that can like can bring the whole ship. And I've been a part of teams. I've seen, organizations where it's like if there's one person with a bad attitude, they cut them quick because otherwise the entire like that seeps into everyone else, that poor attitude. And I've seen it, right? And again, not to say that life isn't hard and there's not things to be upset about, but it's like if we're gonna change it, it's like don't let this quote that I love. I've mentioned this before, but it's like pessimism of the intellect, optimism of the will. It was Antonio
Mhm.
Gramsci. He was a philosopher that died in Italy in the 1930s in a Mussolini fascist prison. Um, and what did he mean by that? He was like, be aware of all these things that are going wrong in the world. Learn about it, right? It should make you angry. It should piss you off, but do not let it get your spirit down because we've mentioned this in past episode, like love is rebellious, love is defiant. If the systems in place want people rooted in fear, don't live in fear. Don't live in, which again, easier said than done. None of this is easy work, but but it is simple, right? It is simple in concept. And,
Yeah.
so I guess those are my thoughts on that, man, where it's just like, if you want the outer world around you to change, really, really try to work on yourself and cultivate that love. And again, we're not there yet. This is a continual process. I slip, driving, someone cuts me off, right? I get heated, you know what I mean? But it's like, as we've mentioned in past episodes, the bounce back is quick. The rebound is quicker when I can get back to balance, when I can get back to, maybe they're having a bad day too, or for a place of understanding or empathy or, any of that sort of stuff. So yeah, man. And what are your points to number five with the outer world reflecting the inner world?
Yeah, for me, when I read that, I think ultimately right away hermetic principles, as above, so below, and for me, I just in my spiritual ego trip was just absorbing stuff like that, and thinking I had a grasp on it intellectually, but really not embodying it at all because I was walking around with a toxic inner world, expecting my outer world to be beautiful and pleasant and being
Mhm.
frustrated and confused as to why it wasn't. And, because I was moving in hypocrisy. And therefore, back to point number one, my awareness needed to deepen on that point. The awareness needed to precede that change. So, yeah, it's the simplest truths are the most profound.
Mhm.
It's, again, it's just like the reflection in the mirror. The outer world reflects the inner world. So if your circumstances are this is like it just the awareness of this provides so much agency. It's so empowering because when we truly recognize that and believe it, know it on an embodied level where it is actually wisdom, it's an instant feedback. Like when we understand that it's all up to us and our vibration, our mood, however you want to say it. And if what we're seeing in the external is not reflecting what we want, there's no one to blame but ourselves. Again, coming back to responsibility. Healing requires responsibility, like point three. So yeah, it's just like there's not even too much to say. It's all there. The outer world reflects the inner world. Just meditate on that.
Yeah.
Like just use that as a mantra
Yeah.
because it's so simple, but yeah, but the mind will find ways of bypassing that and making excuses as to why this current situation is not my fault. That I'm a victim here. It's because that person is, shouldn't have cut me off, or like this family member is just so unreasonable and crazy. It's because they're crazy. It has nothing to do with me. And it's like the mind will always take those paths of least resistance. If those currents exist already, like those paths exist already, that energy wants to go there. So it really takes some focused energy, some focused awareness to sit with that and really take responsibility. Know that everything in your outer world is a reflection of the inner world and build that channel so the energy goes there always and you don't have that sort of lazy energy leaking out kind of draining your energy, pulling the awareness away from truth, which
Yeah.
is that it is a direct reflection. So yeah, man, that's uh that's what I think about that.
Point number six, community matters. Again, a simple, simple thing that we all, yes, intellectually we know, yeah, community matters. But what are we doing? the technology is tearing us away from that.
Yeah.
You know, the trauma that we've you know, that society has faced through COVID, through any of these things that like just decimated community. You know, we that has left a mark on us. That has left a mark on society. And combine the technology and all this other sort of stuff, you're not getting the dose of community through the phone. You're just not. And it's
Mhm.
the same thing with, we are social creatures. Like we need people. When prisons put a prisoner in solitary confinement, it's torture. It's
Yeah.
torture because we need socialization, even if it's with other people who are, you know, in there for bad reasons.
Yeah.
It's like you still want to be around people. You know, it's they've proven that, you know, 7 days in the hole or whatever. Like it's like it fucks with the mind when you are isolated from other people. So community is just is a fundamental one that we need. And you know, in America, it's tough because everywhere costs money. You know, to be, you know, there's people speak on the concept of third spaces.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And you go to Spain and there's just a big park where everyone's hanging out and no one's, you can buy, a drink or something, but it's like you don't need to spend money to spend time in the park.
Yeah.
Whereas America, it's like, yes, there's parks here and stuff, but a lot of stuff, do you have to pay money to park at the park? Like it's like to
Yeah.
park your
Yeah.
car.
Yeah.
Like it's like, a lot of things are out there just to charge you, right? And so I think America needs to do a better job at third spaces. I think we need to do a better job at community. People get it in various ways, right? Whether it's through their church or, through their, if you're in a rec league for sports or, through your job sometimes, right? If you have good coworkers. But you see it popping up more and more, right? And, I get community in different ways, through music with my friends. And, I know Adam does, working out. If you have friends you're working out with, or hobbies, right? Just bonding through people with that sort of stuff. But fight for that. If you don't have it, truly fight for that little piece of community, because it matters for us. And we speak about blue zones around the world where people live long healthy lives, like in Costa Rica or Okinawa, Japan, or
Mm.
and it's like one of the things that they mention, yes, moving, yes, good food, but the other aspect is community, right? Like we need reasons to live and to get up in the morning, and that most of the time that's other people, right? That's other people looking forward to seeing our friends, looking forward to seeing our family. And so those are my thoughts on community, man. I'd love to hear what you have to say on that.
Yeah, it's like the substitution for community, like you said, being the phone or the computer,
Yeah,
and like
that's what they're trying to do.
it's not a real
It's not a real
substitution, it's an
substitution.
illusion.
It's illusion. Yeah.
So yeah, recognizing that yeah, it does not substitute. It can't. Even like recording in person, this is like totally different feel than when we do it over the
Yeah.
phone.
Yeah.
It's having a video call with your family and friends, it's not the same as
No.
joining them for a dinner.
No.
Yeah.
We all felt that, during COVID, right? Like,
Yeah.
you try to catch up with people on the phone, and it's just not the same. Like you
Yeah.
want to give someone a hug, you want to
Yeah.
feel their presence,
Yeah. Yeah.
the energy of being in person, right?
Yeah. That was weird. But man, yeah, everything's done in community, and ultimately we are moving back, it's like the in and out breath of the universe, the expansion and contraction of the universe. It's like that is again the micro and the macro, the inner and the outer. We are that. We are these individuated forms that are just a drop in the ocean, but also the entire ocean in the drop. So like we the illusion of separation, the illusion of different people, like that's actually an illusion, right? We're all one. So we're naturally and in this physical experience, we're naturally pulled to being close to others. And that's where we get our best reflections too.
Yeah.
It's like if you're in community of people, we learn how to socialize and we learn how to come into balance and harmony with ourselves by coming into balance and harmony with other people.
Yeah.
Vice versa, right? It's completely, it's profoundly important to be in community. All change comes through that, and it's funny, right? Because we come, especially in North America, through this like hyper individualized culture, which again, the proof is in the pudding. Just look, become a keen observer of life. Look around and see how that's working.
Yeah.
Wherever things are working better seems to be where people are working together without an eye to like personal gain without an eye to profiting off of everyone. It's like, of course, profiting is okay, but if it's done in community, taking care, equitable sharing, that kind of thing, it's much, it's a holistic
Yeah.
approach, just like a holistic approach to health for the individual self, for the body is the best. It's the same thing, it has to be done in a community
Yeah.
holistically.
Yeah. And one more thing that I want to touch on this that kind of leads into point number 7 is like a lot of the times when another example of COVID, right, where Walmart was open, but all the small local businesses were forced to close.
Mm.
And, so all the money that was in that community gets sucked up and goes to Walmart, right?
Yeah.
And it doesn't stay in the community. And, you see examples of around the world where, really successful communities, they keep the money in the community. And like, yes, obviously some of it's going to get siphoned out, but it's like they help each other, right? They keep the money within the community because they know that, if what if you need help, right? Well, what if your kid gets sick and then everyone in the community pitches in to help you? Or, if one of their neighbors, has their home burns down, God forbid, and then, the community comes together and rallies
Yeah.
to number one, shelter that family and also maybe build another home for them. Like when it comes to the economic aspect of it, we're seeing globalization, right? Products coming from all over the world, and there's this, the pendulum swings back. I'm seeing where I'm at in this part of the country. I don't know if where you guys see that as well, but things are becoming more localized. You see the farmers markets getting more popular, and people buying the local crops instead of going to
Yeah.
the grocery store. And I'm like, that's awesome. Like you're supporting directly into that farmer and that local community
Yeah.
instead of going to the supermarket where again does that money get sucked out of the community and go just to the owners of that corporation. Probably, right?
Yeah.
And so it's like when you keep that money localized, if you own a shop or you own a service or you're doing something, you're an electrician in that community, guess what? That farmer now has money to pay you to come fix their plumbing or whatever when that fails. And so it's like it's just I don't know, it just makes sense to me, y'all. It just makes sense to like obviously, I understand where the corporations a lot of the time they undercut people on price, and not everyone can afford to have the choice of where they grocery shop. They just need to go the cheapest option. I understand that, but if you have the ability to support your community, I think it's great. I really do. And it'll come back to you at some point, right? Again, if your job, if your occupation is in the community, that's going to come back. People remember that sort of stuff. And
Yeah.
which leads into, unless you have anything else to say, otherwise I'm gonna
No,
head on to 7.
it'll probably link in.
Yeah, which goes to conscious living, y'all,
Yeah.
and which is point number 7. And what does that mean, right? When it comes to conscious living, again, Adam mentions, always being a keen observer of life. A lot of things in this world, I'd say aren't necessarily great when it comes to food or when it comes to doctors in our society. I'm not calling out doctors, but it's like they're, a lot of times they're trained to medicate, right? They're trained to just either chop you up and, do surgery or give you drugs. And, consider that there's a third option, which is, good food, right? Like food is also medicine as well. Preventative medicine. Good food is preventative medicine. And so it's just like, being conscious of that, where a lot of the food that we're given, again, economically understand if that's your only option, you go to the cheap food that's has the processed ingredients or has the added sugar or whatever the case is. I get it if that's your only option, right? But just understand also that um it's not going to be good for you, right? Like you are going to in my opinion, pay that cost probably in your health at some point, right? And so just this is where like, I feel like my tinfoil hat kind of comes out where it's just like I think a lot of things are poisonous, right? In this world, we know this, right? A lot of things, materials like PFAS, the forever chemicals, right? We know like, people are cooking with those pans that are
Yeah.
coated in forever chemicals, and those are carcinogenic and those aren't good for you, or the microplastics in your body. Like we understand all these things. And it's so hard. Again, y'all, I know, like to spin the plates of, cooking for your family, working a job, like the commute. And you're like, I don't give a shit what I'm eating off of, dude. Like, I just want to have food in my stomach, or I don't care what I'm eating. I'm just hungry and I'm tired and I'm exhausted. And I understand that. And like I said, we need strong people again, y'all, to make these changes. We need someone who, we need people who even at the end of all of that, right? Still has a little bit of fight in them left to be like, bringing awareness to communities or bringing awareness to their families, even where it's just like, hey, like we're only eating cast iron. We're not eating off of, or we're only eating stainless steel, right? We're not gonna eat off the no stick pans
Yeah.
because they're, we're all dying slowly, but they're speeding up the process a little bit with these certain things. And so that's what we mean when I say conscious living. I'm just trying to give you guys tactile examples of that. But what do you think, man, when it comes to number 7, conscious living?
Yeah, I mean, I like your examples there because uh, they can be an inroad into a deeper understanding of it. Like the way you're explaining that's really good. Focusing on each element because it's like to think about it in terms of how do you bring consciousness and like you said, it can be difficult, but why is it difficult? It's like, yeah, okay, I'm gonna choose the nonstick pan because it's easier to clean. I'm gonna put the iPad in front of the kids because it's easier
Yeah.
to,
'Cause I'm tired.
yeah,
Yeah.
and it's like, why are we tired? Yeah, because of capitalism and like getting paid less and like I get all of that. But at the same time, part of that is like our consciousness has been hijacked, to put it very simply, because it was just a few generations ago, people were still working hard. People were still working, 3 jobs and still, and still taking care of their children without the iPad, not using nonstick pans, just use those, simple examples. And what I guess it's what I'm saying is like when your expectations, when your consciousness has been hijacked by having expectations be different, and then your reality is, expectations versus reality, that can be exhausting. That maybe that's where the exhaustion comes from. Everyone is expecting to live this these sort of like make believe lives that we see on television, and that's why we want this like this convenient. I don't know, this is just one thought that I have. That's why we want this convenience, this instant gratification, this inability to deal with any inconvenience, like the kids crying, just put the iPad in front of them. But if we just bring our awareness back into the present moment and not have it leaking out everywhere, including through all the addictions, which are also draining our energy. You're drinking coffee and eating sugary things all day. Like that's the reason you're running on an energy deficit in the first place. So it's like so conscious living. I think is really like bringing back the energy that has been leaking out in all these different ways to see that like it really can be more simple. Uh, it really doesn't have to be and the sort of expectations versus reality, it doesn't have to be there doesn't have to be such a wide chasm between those things. But recognizing that it's because of our own creation that we do have our energy going, our consciousness going in those different directions, which um, is not the highest, has us living in an expression that is not our highest consciousness.
Yeah.
Not even in a direction to get there. I mean, ultimately, everything does get there. The suffering becomes the grace that brings us there. But it's time to wake up and see it because it just doesn't have to be that way. So many of the problems that we face are quite easily solved when we just take a little bit of a more objective stance. And I would say like, don't take my word for that. Just see, just observe your own reality and recognize find your own truth. Because in my experience, whenever I observe someone else with a problem, I can find their solution very easily. But when I am having the same problem, because it's my problem, I have my blind spots attached to my trauma with it. I have a much more difficult time uh, figuring it out. And this again, community is important. Points always linking here, because if we're in community, people can reflect that back to us. And when you observe someone else's problem, you go, "That's like so simple. Why don't you just take these steps and follow them?" And it's like, but I'm not so good at applying that I have not been so good at applying that to myself. So it's yeah, do that. Just like if you are wanting to make a change, just observe your reality and see that, well, that must be true, so it must apply to me as well. And it's bringing more consciousness into the everyday. Hope that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, man. So folks, those are, again, the 7 things that we really found that are core to us, core to the show, core to our values for what we're trying to preach here in this world. And, it's a continual process. This time next year, there might be twice as long, and we might have discovered more things
Yeah.
that are, that we want to touch upon, right? And so we hope that hopefully you got something out of this recording today. And please do any of the things that help us out that are free, like, comment, subscribe, leave a review, share with someone. All that stuff, engage with us. It really helps us out a lot. And Adam, any closing thoughts on the 7 points of oneself that we've touched upon so far?
Just my own observation that it's a trip, like, surprising but not surprising how everything just goes together. Those aren't separate points. They're all kind of one point
Yeah,
and at the same time, separate points, always the paradox.
yeah,
And such is true for all of life. It's all connected. Again, just become a keen observer of life, sit back and observe and uh, refine the process of doing so without attachment. And really it all begins to unravel in a really beautiful way. Clarity Clarity becomes the norm.
yeah. Man. All right, folks. Well, we will catch you next time, and have a good one in the meantime.
So,